Okay. The Christ hymn in Philippians. The letter to the Philippians was written by St. Paul the Apostle. St. Paul the Apostle. I might have told you about Paul before. Well, I know I have. I don't know if I've told you all the details, but I'll just tell you some stuff again. Paul died in the mid-60s, somewhere in the mid-60s. He was killed during the persecution of Christians under our friend Nero. Remember the fire? And Nero had to blame. So at that time, Paul does no longer appears. Paul disappears from history, is not heard from again, and we know he's probably in Rome, is his last location. So there's good, and there's also the tradition of the Church of Rome that he did die there, so they have his grave and his bones. So, you know, taking all of that together, I see no reason to dispute the fact that he died in Rome somewhere during the reign of Nero in the mid-60s. This is one of his writings. Most scholars accept it as authentic, that he wrote this, or at least he dictated it to a secretary. So it's authentically a letter of Paul the Apostle. Not all of them are in the New Testament. Some were written by disciples in his name, but seem to have come from him. Written to the church in Philippi. Philippi in Greece. Let me look at my Bible. Forget if it's in Turkey or Greece. Hoping that it has the, okay, yeah, it's in northern Greece. Where's my, this PowerPoint's a work in progress too, but I might have included a map. I did. Good. Okay. So up here in northern Greece is where Philippi, the city of Philippi was. So he's writing to the Christian church in northern Greece in Philippi, although, well, I should be Macedonia. I once had a student in one of my classes who was Macedonian, and I made the nasty mistake of saying that Alexander the Great was Greek. Ooh! Ooh, he slapped me down fast. I had to be quick on my feet that time, because it was a mistake. I said he was Greek. Well, but they were speaking Greek in their Greek culture. Yeah, but he was Macedonian. Okay. Because Macedonia is now a country above Greece, and they've had some international cross-border issues with Greece. Greece didn't even want them to call themselves Macedonia. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. And they don't speak Greek in Macedonia. They speak Macedonian, which is a Slavic language. But anyways, so whatever. It's the Greek area. Don't go nuts, so don't kill me, okay? So Philippi is up here. And what I had you read, scholars call the Christ hymn. It is a hymn, a song directed towards Jesus. It's very early. The letter to the Philippians, scholars believe sometime between 54 and 57 AD is when it was written. 54 and 57. Make sure my notes are correct. Uh-oh. Oh. It's not good. Where did I put that? Oh, it's over here. Huh. Oh, 54 to 58. Excuse me, I'm off by a year. Add a year to that 7. 54 to 58. How do they know this? Because from reading his letters and books like Acts of the Apostles, they can get an idea from historical references in Luke's work where Paul was at certain times, and it can actually get close to some of the actual dates, and then they can work in the letters. So 54 to 58 AD, excuse me. So earlier than the Gospel of Mark. Remember, Paul's authentic stuff is earlier than the Gospels. So if he's quoting from a hymn, this hymn is even earlier than Paul. This is pre-existed hymn. Wasted on your people. Wasted. Ugh. Oh, it's warm out. So we don't need to read the whole chapter. We're just interested in this section and the traditions that it has that predate the Gospels, traditions of what Christians were believing about Jesus. Let's see, Miss O'Hara, would you like to read, please, from the Christ hymn? Thank you very much. Okay. So just that first verse, I'd give you the context from Paul, and then the rest of it seems to be the hymn that he's quoting from. Okay. Start with the first verse. Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, and I give you the Greek underlying and morphe, theou. We know these words, in, morphe. We use this word in English. We say something morphs into something else, transforms, changes. A metamorphosis is a change. Okay? So we know this word of morphing. So morphing or changing form, and theou, of course, from theos for God. So we know this is not a problem for us. Okay? So he was in the form of God. This word morphe, the line over the E just means a long E. That's all it is. Instead of morphe, it's morphe. And it's, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. I was going to say something else, but it doesn't matter. And morphe is an interesting term to describe Jesus because the Greek word morphe means like your essential character. Your form is your essential character, what you are essentially, in your essence or your substance. So it's coming close to saying that while Jesus is God, close to saying, without saying he actually is, there's still a distance. Okay, this idea of a morphe, while it does include this idea of essence, essential character, it also carries within it a distinction, maybe even a separation. But Mr. Dunn, I thought the Trinity, the persons, not three gods, are not separate. Yes, but remember, these are early days. People use terminology and they want to say something, and sometimes the way they talk, they don't think it's a problem until sometime later someone might question it and say, well, do you mean this? Well, no. Well, but how do you know that? Well, I don't know. And you have to start thinking through the words. But nevertheless, in the form of God, his essential character was godlike. Let's put it that way. Jesus was godlike. Okay, because that keeps this idea of he's divine in some way, but there's also some kind of distance between him and capital G God. Capital G God. The translation here stinks. This did not regard equality with God something to be grasped. That translation sucks. And I don't know why they continue, or in the NAB they have it, in the New Testament. It's not very good. As you can tell if you look at the Greek, which we will. Greek on Thursday, Mr. Mondiello. Good stuff. The words that we have here, everything is okay, except it's confusing how it is translated. The word harpagmos, which they translate something to be grasped, it's not really what the word means. The word harpagmos means like a robbery, thievery, taking something that isn't yours. Okay? If I take something from you that isn't yours, it's robbery. I'm robbing you. Or taking something that I don't deserve to have. Would be a better way of putting it. Okay? What literally it says, when you translate it more literally to the Greek, it would go like this: who, existing in godlike form, did not consider it robbery, or you could say did not consider it something undeserved, to be equal to God. Okay, you see it makes a little bit, there's a little bit more, the meaning sound is different. When you read this, it sounds like Jesus did not think to be God was something to be grasped. Like he didn't think he was God. You could see that, you know. He didn't try to take God. He wasn't God. But that's actually not what it's saying. It's saying exactly the opposite. That Jesus did not think he was taking anything away from God by being equal to God. So this idea that because Jesus is also God-like, somehow God, capital G God, is diminished in some way. He like loses a little part of his godhood, you know what I'm saying? But to him it's saying, no, that's not. To be equal to God was not robbery for Jesus. He wasn't taking something that was undeserved, harpagmos. Okay? So I want to point that out, because that translation is not a good one. I don't know why they stick with it. But, you know, it takes time for translations to change. This new NABRE, the one I have you using, I've been reading. I was reading Ezekiel the other day. I was very disappointed because I found a really bad mistranslation where they forgot to say, they forgot the word not, but they forgot in the translation. They actually have the text, the Hebrew text, saying the opposite of what it says, saying such and such when it says such and such is not what is the case, you know? So it reads, and I'm reading it and I'm like, that doesn't sound right, you know? Because the text of Ezekiel is, you know, what is it again? If a just person turns away from his righteous deeds, stops doing good and does evil, then I will punish the righteous person. And it says, like, even if, and this is the prophet, Ezekiel, even if you tell the righteous person that he's going on the wrong path, I'll still punish you, Ezekiel. I will hold you accountable for his blood. And I'm thinking to myself, that doesn't sound like a just God. I mean, he did his part. You know, he did what he was supposed to do. He told the just man, you're doing evil, you're going to die, you're going to be punished by God. So I look at the Hebrew text, and that's where they forgot the not. You know, because you did not, Ezekiel, tell the just man. Not even if you tell him, or told him. You see, it's wrong. So I have to contact the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and it's completely wrong. And I checked my other versions, other English translations, other stuff, the Hebrew text, I'm like, this is totally wrong. So anyway, so beware. Okay? All right. He emptied himself. Okay? He emptied himself, meaning Jesus, not God, taking the form of a slave in human likeness, human appearance. Notice this progression. Interesting, because it doesn't make it explicit, but I'm going to make it explicit for you. That Jesus is like he's up here and then he's down here. He empties himself. He lowers himself into not anymore in the morphe of a God, but now he's in the morphe, same word, of a slave. By becoming human. So you see in nut form, in germ form, in seed form, this idea of the incarnation, this belief that somehow Jesus is a pre-existent divine being or creature. Where they haven't figured that out, whether it's created divine or... But somehow he's godlike before he became human. He's a godlike being who becomes human. He lowers himself, he empties himself, and enslaves himself to human nature. Enslaves, what does that mean? That Jesus can have emotions, that Jesus can grow, his body, that Jesus can learn things. Jesus, all the limitations. He takes on all the limitations of the human creature that he does not have in morphe theou, when he's in the form of God. God is not bounded by space or time. God's power is not bounded by anything. Okay? But when, by becoming a limited creature, a human, he does bind himself to limitations. So he's enslaved. That's this idea of slavery. Becoming a slave. And coming in human form. God bless you. When it says human form, it does not mean he was not human. Or he only appeared human. Once again, did they have this fully figured out? No, because some Christians later would say, well, no, he's kind of like a ghost, maybe, you know. He looked human, but wasn't really human, you know. But this is their belief, that he was in the form or the likeness of a human being. Because that's how they found him. That's how they experienced him. Okay? And once again, this idea of humbling himself, to lower himself, and now we have a reference to death, the ultimate enslavement. The ultimate enslavement. God, who does not die, will die. Opens himself to the possibility of his human existence ending, which is death. Which will happen to all of us. Sorry to tell you. Sorry. You know? But we're all going to die. I'm going to die, God willing, before you, because I'm closer to death. But what are you going to do? You know? I'm kind of interested to see what happens. You know, I don't know how painful it's going to be, but I'm interested to see what happens. I know it'll be sad. Yes, I know it'll be sad. But if I believed it was, you know, there's other stuff coming along, I'm interested to see what that will be like. And what kind of trouble I can cause in the next life. And if I go beyond, I promise you all, I'll pray for you. I'll be looking out for you. I will be talking about you to God. Okay. So have a good weekend. See you next week. Have a good day. Whoa.